Back in 1998, the US was introduced to Nintendo 64's first RPG game, a short lived golden gem that fans have never forgotten.
The mystery, the magic, the game. Quest 64, the new adventure RPG for Nintendo 64. Ooh. Get in or get out.
Quest 64 is a single-player role-playing video game released for the Nintendo 64, developed by Imagineer and published by THQ. Quest 64 is known as Elale Monsters in Japan and Holy Magic Century in Europe, Australia, and New Zealand. It was originally going to be named Crystal Stories. Imagineer is a Japanese content industry or entertainment company, and THQ, also known as Toy Headquarters, was an American video game developer and publisher best known for working on games like WWE and games for Nickelodeon and Disney before going bankrupt and shutting down in 2013. Quest 64 is set in a medieval world and follows an apprentice mage named Brian set out to find his father, whom had been investigating the theft of Elale's book. Quest 64 was not your typical RPG game. When Brian is in combat mode, you don't get placed in a different battle layout screen like you're used to seeing. Instead, the main player gets right into battle, but movement is limited to the bounds in the battle arena. Gaining experience is also different as the player does not level up. Instead, experience is gained for specific stats like defense and offense, and you can also upgrade your magic elements and attacks. The magic elements, air, earth, water, and fire, are controlled with the C buttons, and you can use them together to create more powerful spells, like using fire, then water to create a hot steam attack. There are over 50 spells and more than 100 characters. Brian can carry items to heal or temporarily boost his stats, but there is no equipment in the game. Quest 64 has no money system, and items are found by treasure chests, NPCs, or by defeating enemies. If Brian runs out of HP, the game will return to the last save. The original beta of the game was different. There were 5 elements and not 4, and the game's story was based around an evil spirits handler named Larva. The game would have featured 3 playable characters with their own strengths and weaknesses. Unfortunately, Quest 64 was not well received. It was usually rated under a 6 out of 10. The game proved that quality RPGs work on the N64, but there were several letdowns. First, the game was considered too short and simple, and the extended update version only came out in Japan much later. The graphics were praised, but the game was criticized for the gameplay, storyline, length, and exploration. The next game was released in 1999 for the Game Boy Color, called Quest Fantasy Challenge by Sunsoft and Imagineer. Brian must beat 20 levels by collecting all crystals and shooting enemies with a magic staff that needs to recharge. The player gets power-ups like speed or more firepower, and you can dig the dirt under chests to have them fall on top of enemies. This game was essentially a parody of an arcade game known as Mr. Do, released in 1982, and not actually a sequel to Quest 64. In January of 2000, a Game Boy Color demake version of Quest 64 was released by Sunsoft and Imagineer. The demake was called Quest Brian's Journey for North America and Elemental Tale Jack's Great Adventure Satan's Counterattack in Japan. This game was an expanded version of the original Quest 64 game with both more story and gameplay, and even includes cutscenes. You control Brian from an aerial view and gain experience points to level up elemental attacks and spells. The enemies can move around during the fights and evade attacks while trying to corner you. The spell elements were updated to look like the elements they represent, and your inventory is limited to 20. You can even save outside of the inn. Although it received a bad rating from IGN, the game was well received as it was a much easier to understand version of Quest 64 with more features. But where is the sequel? At unseen64.net, a translation of an article was posted speaking about work on Holy Magic Century 2, supposedly from a Nintendo Fun Vision article that even has artwork from the game. The game was going to be set 100 years after the original, and you would be able to play with two different characters: Leon, a magician, and Sophia, a swordswoman. This sequel was never confirmed by Imagineer or Sunsoft or Nintendo. It has been 23 years since a release, and there doesn't seem to be any hints that a game is being worked on. Quest 64 is not part of the Nintendo Online games as of yet. Sadly, there's a chance that there may never be another Quest game. Personally, I think that having so many different names for a game did not help the series, as calling a sequel Quest 64 2 is a bit confusing. There were also other games that were more successful that Nintendo may have felt were more important. Are you a Quest 64 fan? Are you waiting for a proper sequel or remake? Do you agree that a definitive name should have been used for the series? Let us know what you think in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more content like this at Game Circle TV.